Welcome to the Welsh Yogi Podcast. Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Welcome to the Welsh Yogi Podcast, everyone. I'm back to Ben, and we're with the amazing.
My name's Gopal, and here we are back again in the ashram attic.
Yep.
We've had a good few weeks now of having different guests on. Like we had 2 parts with Tarakanath Prabhu, who's founded the sort of spiritual empire of the Hare Krishna movement in Wales.
Yeah.
We've had Achyutatma on, talking about his adventures in India and what inspired him to come to spiritual life. And last week we had Prema Ras, who's the owner of Sacred Elephant Incense Company, and someone who has really dedicated his life also to uplifting others spiritually. And now it's back, just the 2 of us.
Just the 2 of us. We got the Sri Upanishad.
Back on the Sri Upanishad program.
So if you're not familiar with the Sri Upanishad program and you've just joined since those interviews on Atma,
we will go back to Atma as well.
Yeah, we're going to do a bit of everything.
Atma's like our home now.
Yeah, it's like it's the control center.
Yeah.
But we're just here stripping it back to basics, you know. But basically, we read through the Sri Upanishad, which is a beautiful ancient Bhakti yoga text.
Yeah.
And we've been going through it quite slowly. Just reading through so you've got like different verses, and then there's purports, which are explanations by Srila Prabhupada. So I don't know, maybe people aren't pretty familiar with who Srila Prabhupada is, or
yeah, we've talked about Srila Prabhupada in a previous episode.
If you're not familiar, it would be a good practice to binge watch every single episode.
You're always free to have a binge, especially in the Welsh Yogi podcast. Sometimes you might feel a bit guilty having a binge, but when it comes to the Welsh Yogi podcast, it's completely fun.
Guilt-free. It's uplifting. Like, there we are. So yeah, we're reading Sri Upanishad. If you want one, let us know.
Yeah.
Through the channels.
Yeah, and we will send you one.
We'll get one to you. But we're reading Mantra 6 today.
So that's what we're about at the Welsh Yogis. We're about giving.
Giving.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's better to give than receive, isn't it?
I was thinking earlier on as I was driving here, what is the motivation to do these podcasts? And I was thinking, we want to make it clear that we're doing it just to try and share spiritual knowledge with people that we've found helps us, and just to try and fulfill our dharma of helping others. And this is just another way to do it, and it's quite fun, it's interesting and that. But why was I talking about that?
I don't know. That might be your motivation, but I'm in it for name, fame, and adoration.
Yeah. See your face in lights.
Yeah, I want to be famous.
No, why was I talking about that? You mentioned something.
Good question. Oh, we're talking about better to give than receive.
Better give, yeah. I can't remember.
Anyway, I'm sure it was very profound, and it will come back up. Like,
okay, could you read it?
Yeah, sorry, dead air is no good, is it? So we're reading this Mantra 6. So we usually say a little invocation beforehand, just to set a sort of auspicious.
Yeah, it's when we're reading these literatures we do, isn't it?
Yeah, and it goes. You can repeat after us, but it goes Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Yeah, I was going to say as well. There's a picture of Prabhupada here above my head.
Yeah, that's Prabhupada.
I was watching on video, so.
Yeah, shout out
Prabhupada.
So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay.
So we're just gonna read. Do you want to read the Sanskrit, Gopal? I know you're a great Sanskritist.
I can try.
I don't know if you want to go a bit closer to the mic. I'm not sure. I'm not 100%.
Okay, I'll go a bit closer. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani evanupashyati sarva bhuteshu tatmanang tato na vijugupsate.
Nice.
That's, just those who aren't fluent in Sanskrit. This is quite nice, actually, the word for word. So, yastu sarvani bhutani. He who sees all living entities, Atmani evanupashyate, observes, so he who sees all living entities in reference to Atmani, the supreme Atma, or the self,
Yeah.
who sees all living entities like on a spiritual platform, equal with themselves and all parts of the supreme Atma, Krishna. Sarva bhuteshu chatmanam. In every living being, he sees the soul and the super soul within each living being. And tato na vijugupasate, never hates anyone.
Wow.
The English translation here is he who systematically sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord, who sees all living entities as the Supreme's parts and parcels, who sees the Supreme within everything, never hates anything or any being.
Wow. It's like a formula to get free from hate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one commentary on this verse by one of the acharyas. I've got a little book here. It's just called Subodhini. It's like a little study guide for this Sri Upanishad, and there's some nice stuff in here. It talks about, one comment here is hatred and love are opposites.
Mm.
So unless one is devoid of hatred, one cannot attain love. So I thought that was a nice point. And later on in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about systematically seeing. Now that means it's something you've got to practice. So it's like a good practice to put into our lives actively is to try, and it's something you do have to practice. So it's not like just flicks a switch and that's it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But you've got to practice.
There's no magic pill.
There's no magic pill and there's no magic wand. You have to practice not hating.
Yeah.
And practice this vision of seeing everyone as a spirit soul, and
it's connected, connected to the whole to Krishna as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It reminds me of something that, because Tarkanath, he gives us a lot of advice and help, especially when I struggle sometimes a lot with my mind. It likes to have a scream and a shout about why this thing's not good and that thing's not bad. But he says always think of Krishna or always think of positive things, because your mind can only think of one thing at a time. So if you're thinking about something positive, then you can't think of something negative. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So, go on.
Well, I was going to, that's something that I've also learnt in just one element to deal with things like depression is doing good for others.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, it's like this cup. Once this cup is full, it's full. Oh, would you like some Coke? Oh, no, I'm sorry, my cup's full, sort of thing. So similarly, if our worrying capacity is taken up, or it's already full because we're already worrying about others, then you won't worry so much about our own situation, all these other things that we worry about, which we don't need to. So similarly, on the point you were making, that there's only so much you can fill your cup with, and you have a choice with what to fill it with. So that active sort of meditation on choosing how to see the world, choosing what you think of, it does make a big difference.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I just at the beginning it says he who systematically sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord, or you could say anything in relation to Krishna, sees all living entities as parts and parcel. Actually, I'll just read the whole verse. And it sees Krishna within everything and never hates anything or any living being. So if you just connect everything to Krishna, because we've discussed about Krishna before, like the concept of.
Do you remember? Sorry, it's just a bit off point.
No, it's fine.
Do you remember that story where Vaisheshika Prabhu was? Sorry, I gotta go closer than
Sorry.
He went out for a walk, and he just happened to have a copy of this book in his pocket. And there was a builder there, and it was just after 9/11 happened, and this was in New York as well. So the whole energy was very tense, especially against things like religion or things that seem to sort of, like we talked about with Prema the other day, sort of segregate things into tribes, etc.
Yeah.
And this person he saw Vaisheshika walking, and he was full on in his robes and shaved head, happy monk sort of walking down the road, and this person came up to him and says something like, "What are you, Buddha? Are you Buddha?" And Vaisheshika says, "Well, no, this is what we're about." Shows him this book, and he reads him this verse.
Really?
Yeah, this exact verse, and reads it out to him. One who systematically sees everything in relation to the Supreme, who sees all living entities as his parts and parcels, who sees Krishna within everything, never hates anything or any being. So then that struck this person, and this person actually bought one of the books because it was that point where this is non-sectarian, this is real spiritual life actually reaches for universal brotherhood on a spiritual platform. If you have the understanding that I'm a soul different to this body, and this other person's also a soul, and deep down they're going through all the struggles and difficulties that I'm going through, then I have a reason to love that person. You see it in the rugby. If someone else is from, when I go traveling around the UK, if I meet someone else from Swansea, if I say, "Oh, where are you from?" They say, "I'm from Swansea." I'm like, "Oh, I'm from Swansea as well."
Oh my God!
And there's this just
brotherhood,
instant deep connection. Like we're like soulmates that have just found each other, And the only thing we don't know anything about each other. We just know that we're both from Swansea. So there's a natural brotherhood that just happens if this person's from the same place.
Yeah.
So universal brotherhood can only happen when we understand that fundamentally we're all spiritual and we're all coming from the same place.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Krishna.
From Krishna. It's hard to, but that's why it says systematically. You can't just click it and we're all spiritual. You gotta sort of evolve that kind of vision. But that's what also it say in the purport. It was talking because purport's the description by Prabhupada. It was talking about the dog, wasn't it?
He's a dog at the same level as a brahmana or a priest and a dog, or every person equally because there's a soul in every. Is that what you mean? Yeah,
he goes. He knows that there's no essential difference between a vastly learned brahmana, which is like you said, like a priest or a
I guess a sage, like a really spiritual person,
like a spiritual teacher.
People. Yeah.
So he says there's no essential difference between the vastly learned brahmana and a dog on the street, because both of them are part and parcel, so tiny particles, of the Lord. Although they're encaged in different bodies on account of the different qualities of their activities of previous lives. It's really interesting that concept of being encaged within your body, because we've discussed that before as well, quite a lot. We receive this body that we have based on our actions in previous lives, which is quite a fundamental concept of karma, isn't it? So according to our desires and the way that we act, then we sort of unlock different body parts or different. Because it said that the body of your next life is being formed now in your subtle body. So we have a gross body, which is this physical body, but the subtle body is made up of our mind and our intelligence and our ego, who we think we are, And within that subtle body, within that non-physical, hard, touchable body, our next body is already being generated based on the way we're acting at every moment. So if you're constantly, there's the pictures in the old Bhagavad Gita's, if you're constantly sleeping, then that desire to sleep all the time might sort of start to develop attributes like a bear which sleeps half the year. So a very simplistic way of viewing it, but it's interesting that this talks about if you see everyone as that soul, then you start to see that the only reason they have that particular encagement or encasing is because of the way that they've desired in the past lives, but then that's not them, that's just like their temporary, like a sheath, like what you put a sword in, isn't it? So I just think it's really interesting,
That's nice, and because it makes the point also later in the purport, because also in the purport to this verse, just there's different kinds of spiritualists described. There's
different levels, isn't it? Like,
yeah. So there's those people who, once they've come to the spiritual path, they just see themselves and God, for example.
These are noobs.
So yeah, so like, oh yeah, they're completely oblivious to all other types of people and just concerned about themselves and their own spiritual emancipation. Then when they're a bit more, when the consciousness is more, they start to show compassion towards those who they could see need their help. They start to develop deep friendships with others. They serve those who are higher in lovingly, and they avoid the negative. The haters will hate. They avoid the haters.
Yeah.
And then above that is the person who generally sees universal brotherhood and is completely in love with every living being. And it mentions in the purport that can only happen. You can only truly be in deep love with all living entities if you see on that spiritual platform. Yeah. And how you get materially, it says, Srila Prabhupada says, politicians, etc., they try and do this, or they at least masquerade as trying to help everyone.
It says that, doesn't it?
But the fact that they, a lot of the time, have invested material interests, and they see people materially, it doesn't actually happen, and they end up taking advantage of people, sort of thing.
I'm seeing like a very clear, from the way you just described that, there's like a very clear distinction between sort of love and hate, material and spiritual. So as the slider goes from spiritual to material, or the other way around, from material to spiritual, so like that slider of love and hate, the more materially minded you are, the more you think, I'm this body, I'm this external sheath, then the more you see the differences between people. His body is different to my body, you start, and those differences you start to hate. But like the more spiritually minded, you said, these people that see everyone as spiritual, they're in love with everyone, so
because there's a deep connection there. Like, why do I love my family more than someone else's family? Because they're mine, and they're closer to... Sukadeva Goswami, the sage who spoke Srimad Bhagavatam, mentions this point, that the self is naturally the most dear thing to someone. So therefore, those which are closer to you, my mum, my dad, my brother, you have more care for them than other people. Then if you go a little bit out, you've got my house, my neighborhood, my country, my football team, etc. So the more that something's closer to you, the more affection you have for it, because as it goes closer to the center, I'm the most dear thing. So, but then Sukadeva Goswami says, but the self of the self, the innermost part of even you, there is Krishna. And Krishna, in the form of Paramatma, or the soul in the heart of every living being, Krishna is spread everywhere. So on that platform, you see every living being as being deeply and profoundly connected to you and your own sense of being. So then, and because you have so much love for Krishna, you love every other. Like Srila Prabhupada said, a Krishna conscious person or a bhakti yogi, he has love for even an ant.
It sounds beautiful, and it makes a lot of sense as well, doesn't it? So seeing everything in relation to that, because that's interesting that the words Paramatma, like the cafe is called Atma, isn't it? Atma
Lounge.
Atma Lounge. It's not a cafe anymore, is it?
It is a cafe. It's Atma's a very interesting place. The fact that it's a little hub where, for those who, we're trying to provide the facility to help with this dharma of really giving, the dharma to give. So we want to give food to those who need it, help people live a yoga lifestyle, help them cultivate ancient wisdom, and give people the tools and association to practice mantra meditation. And really as a service, as a hub to really enlighten people's lives and at least offer the experience of tasting these different mellows of love that we've been discussing, you know. So Atma, you're going to say Atma Lounge.
Oh, and the Paramatma. No, it doesn't.
Paramatma.
Paramatma just means like the super self. But you sparked something else then. You were talking about mantra meditation, and because that concept that you're talking about, this is my house and this is my family and these are my, this is my these sort of expansions of our ego. You know?
And when we get into other planet, like you see on alien films, we've got to protect planet Earth. It's Mars, you know. And then when we get into different universe battles, you know, it's our universe against the other universe.
Yeah.
So it just expands from that. That's the bodily conception of life. You know, there's no. So we've got to see unity in the diversity.
Yeah, and that's sort of like that false ego, that false sense of I'm separate from everything else. Is like almost like a contamination, like a covering, because that's why we're encaged in the first place in these different bodies. You know?
And one thing that I also want to touch upon as well is that this lack of sort of equal vision. Now, like we said, you know, it's my body, my family. The more selfish you are, and you know, selfishness is something that we all have, and sometimes you might have to fight to not be selfish. You know, you don't condemn yourself so much if you have this mentality. But what I'm saying is, if more selfish you are, then the more you'll see other people as enemies, even your own family. And then you can be, one has to be careful, because you can even start seeing your own body as an enemy. You know, oh, I'm so hideous, or, you know, I hate myself, sort of thing, you know. So that's another reason why the psychologists say, you know, if focus on doing good for others helps get rid of this sort of self-condemnation, which is very, very prominent these days. You know, people are so hard on themselves, but actually, you deserve to be loved, and you think, well, yeah, if I love someone, I wouldn't treat them the way I treat myself, sort of thing. You know, people condemn themselves so much. You know, give yourself a break. You know, one thing that we say, you got to encourage everyone.
Encourage the heck out of everyone.
Encourage the heck out of everyone, and live your life to uplift others, and that means encouraging yourself as well. You know, don't leave yourself out of the equation here when we're talking about universal love. You know.
Yeah, it's so common as well when you're starting to try to like practice some kind of spiritual life. You start to like, you want to develop these qualities that are favorable to that, and sometimes you start to see where you're falling short of the mark, isn't it? Like, and then in that state, it's real easy just to like start going, there's no hope for me. Like I'm just. But yeah, like if you spoke to anyone else in the same way, like as you speak to yourself,
you'd think, oh yeah, you'd think, oh, this person needs my help, you know.
Yeah.
But when it comes to us, a lot of the time we're very negative, you know.
Yeah.
I was reading this morning actually again in Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna, he's giving instructions on yoga, and he says that one might be practicing yoga or a spiritual path, and he says, and you know, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. There's going to be slip-ups, but don't become chronically depressed. In fact, you should be, you know, it's like an order. Continue to be happy and enthusiastically carry on practicing Bhakti yoga. So, it's the most difficult thing to do is to be happy when you're feeling depressed.
Oh yeah, you're telling me, like,
you know. But if you take that as, okay, this is like a yoga practice that I've got to do, just like trying to see everyone equally on a spiritual platform. It doesn't mean you have to do it. It doesn't mean flick a switch and it just happens. So similarly, being happy isn't like, just take it as, okay, this is a practice. I've got to try and cultivate happiness, enthusiasm, determination, and patience. And don't, which means sort of the caveat of that is don't beat yourself down when it's just not happening right now.
Yeah, I heard something really interesting recently about how what our mind considers, then it becomes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, if your mind is constant,
enters into the object.
Yeah. So like, if your mind is constantly like, I'm worthless, I'm so like, oh, I'm terrible, blah 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 blah.
Oh yeah.
Then you just become that.
Yeah.
Like, but if you like you say, even if you're faking the happiness, it's gonna lift you up.
That's the science of affirmations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It sounds cheesy in that, but if I said to you, "Oh, you look terrible this morning,"
thank you.
You feel terrible. Yeah. If I say, "Oh, you look really good this morning," you're like, "Yeah, you feel really good."
Yeah.
So that same happens when we have our own dialogue. You know, we have our own narrative that we teach ourselves. So the art of affirmations and things like that is, okay, actively taking control of my own narrative and just giving a bit of positivity in my life.
Yeah, bringing it up rather than knocking it down. Nice. I think that was a really nice podcast. I think that's a good place to finish it.
Yeah, that was a good. Sri Upanishad is wonderful. Anyone wants a copy, let us know. We're on Mantra 6. We will finish this book. I mean, I that's the thing. I think I think we should do 2 podcasts a week.
Yeah.
Because I like the element of having guests, and I think we should continue that as much as possible. Or we need to think of themes that go with the guests, because we do want to sort of bring out these sort of very important yoga points that are in these ancient wisdom literatures in a relatable way. So
it'd be nice to get a balance as well, because like I really like hearing the stories. Like Chutatma's story was hilarious. Like, especially when he's like, he just swam out to the ocean. Yeah, do you remember that?
Yeah, and then the voice said, "You're not ready to die now." It's just like, what? He just swam. Swam and swam.
Go listen to a Chutatma's one, by the way, if you haven't listened to that already.
Yeah. And then Taraknath's one was good about Buzz.
Yeah.
Who's like just hippie sort of.
Yeah, no, Buzz is like the original what's his name, Morpheus from the Matrix. Yeah, no, it's just because hearing people's stories, how they came to this kind of thing, is just like, it'd be good to expand on that. And hear some other stories.
Because it's relatable. Because I think, say, do you know what I mean? If someone was going to say like, are you going to be a self-realized yoga sage and live your life spiritually completely for the benefit of others, sort of thing, it almost seems unattainable. But there's people who are living it, and it also shows evidence that spiritual life, real spiritual life, there is such a thing. You know what I mean? It's not just like I've been disillusioned with religion and crystals and all sorts of stuff that might not, I've been to these sort of, what do they used to call them? These shows we used to go to. It's like a health and well-being show or something, and you just had all these people on these stalls just selling all kinds of just fake spiritual stuff, and the people were lapping it up. It shows the desire is there for something more, but unless the real thing is put on display, then people will just buy the cheap imitation stock and just be cheated. So that's why I see these podcasts and broadcasting these interviews, because I do feel like we at least have to show that there is bona fide spiritual life out there, and we can't just be sort of covered with the cheap imitations that are out there.
Yeah, bringing it back to the verse as well, like where the verse said systematic. So like it's a system. Like it's not
scientific, systematic.
It's not like move to a cave, you're now a yogi, Om Shivaya Namaha, whatever. It's like it's a gradual process. So like you can actually just slowly, like we were going to the slider, you can slide that slider from hate to love, but gradually, systematically.
Yeah.
So that's.
So and again, I know we should stop soon, but Krishna in his yoga teachings sort of also says that real, sort of uses the word piety, or real sort of, you're properly situated. If from wherever you are at, you practice what works what works for you
Mm.
and brings you up step by step.
Mm.
So it's not like one artificially jumps to a certain level.
Work from where you're at, like.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, he was a very busy person, had a very busy job to do, had family to look after.
Mm.
And the whole Bhagavad Gita is Krishna teaching him the art of turning his work and all his lifestyle into yoga without necessarily changing anything externally.
Mind blowing. Awesome. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Rasa Yogi Podcast.
Madhashikshana Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srimati Gaur Bhaktavinda Madhashikshana Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srimati Gaur Bhaktavinda